Hey tribe, how are you? My goodness, the energies are powerful. Really, really powerful energies. This eclipse season is in review for us. Reviewing stuff that came up last summer and probably we may very well be looking at suffering patterns that we've harbored, carried for uh, as long as we've been incarnate, basically. So, collective programs around division, gender divide, class divide, a lot of the isms are coming through for me, and certainly very deep reserves of suffering around alienation and aloneness. Um, and well, just lifelong, like this lifetime, tr- uh, triggers that are triggering the earliest of childhood wounds, ultimately around limitation, around undeservingness, around unworthiness, around not being heard, not another edge is as well being silenced. So with that, I always want to encourage us to share here as a platform. And ultimately, what we want to understand or really grapple is that the sharing is part of exposing the darkness. So we don't ever have to feel like, you know, I have to keep it really positive and light on the Fist Life Tribe. If anything, I want us to share really, really openly and vulnerably. Um, and I can say that I'm part of this whole cycle completion is looking at really dark aspects of self, and this is often, it's so paradoxical or counterintuitive because it's stuff that maybe we think we've overcome, darkness maybe we think we've already exposed, and yet when it comes up for review, we can almost shock ourselves by exposing our own darkness. So as I'm reviewing certain lifelong patterns and cycles, energetically speaking, I'm seeing that edge of not wanting the best for other people, of actually wanting people to fail, perpetuating a gossip conversation around blame and attack, and noticing that I can keep blaming other, or I can integrate the energy in self and make a choice, right? Based on resonance, based on point of attraction, based on understanding the deeper work. And remembering that when we expose our darkness, so when we share, when I can share that, it becomes it is shining. It's shining the light of our awareness onto an aspect of our darkness. And knowing that, especially collectively, because of our program, often what we have to overcome is the shame of carrying darkness, because in a funny old way, our world, our system, our program teaches us to be ashamed of our darkness, and so we deny it. We try to pretend it's not there, and yet all of us have these aspects of darkness within us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be incarnate. We wouldn't be in existence in this realm, in this dimension. So deepening the connectivity into our own divine spark or source point is ultimately where we can yoke our compassion and love to continue to endeavor our own darkness. And it's when we endeavor our own darkness that we can ultimately shine light on collective darknesses and even multidimensionality darknesses, which simply means beings whose agendas are a little bit different from like those of us who are desiring almost this sort of beautiful heaven, new earth template, new paradigm. Those of us endeavoring that reality on the planet are really having to commit to the vision and thus the vibrational download that we are receiving in any given moment. And recently, I'm talking just the last couple of days, And I do remember this from last year when the eclipse belt was coming in and fading out, and right in this middle phase of really like looking at patterns that we know we've been consciously transforming. And then when they come up again, it's coming up for review and commitment. It's coming up for a review of, do you really believe? Are you really desiring to create this higher manifestation or this more beautiful, loving manifestation? If that's the case, you still have to witness, love, be grateful for, and then lovingly release the darkness that we've carried. And the darkness is simply a density based on a limited perception, which holds us in a reality that doesn't ultimately serve the truth of our being. And the truth of our being would have incarnate and on this planet for a specific purpose, you could say, and a certain set of experiences which attunes to us as beings in a feeling. So a feeling of freedom, a feeling of expansion. And ultimately we can recognize that all we do as beings is birth ourselves into the contrast. So we birth ourselves into maybe a sense of freedom that gets taken away from us, or a sense of joy. It gets taken away. We get imprinted to the other polarity. And then we sift through contrast throughout our lives. And ideally at one point or at some lifetime, we kind of go, ah, and we remember who we are and recognize that part of this unwrapping or unraveling is almost like a natural process of our ascension or awakening. And it's weird, it's trippy. That's part of having a group to share all this stuff with, is that I'm hearing a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing, that humanity can use the words of the sacred and kind of twist it around to benefit our story's projection. And what we want to keep doing is dropping into our own heart and committing to the highest vision for our own personal life, and really letting go of the thought projection that we think we know how other people should behave. And I know that's really challenging because we do work in collective, but what I recognize is that the deeper we commit to the own self-knowing, then other selves in their knowing tend to start to reflect us. And then that makes the contrast easier to sift through, because it's evident when an energetic being is not that, or is not able to reflect that back to us. And that's simply maybe our own deeper lessons of detachment. And yet here I am looking at this increase of self-awareness. So our ability to detach from this thinking we know other, or because the thinking we know other is usually part of a programmed belief system or construct that we've absorbed from society and from our parentage. And so there is always going to be a diligent sort of discernment in how we are perceiving our reflection, and whether or not a reflection is reflecting back to us our shadows, our darknesses, and or our future potential. And I can see that in any given manifestation, there is polarity and there is simultaneity. So in every single moment, it's so weird, right? But in every single moment, we are essentially creating on multiple timelines. And part of becoming more whole is actually that we integrate those aspects to be more present. And that is something where, until we start to really work with our emotional field, which is really the storage house of our emotional experiences, until we're working with that in tandem with the mental and physical, right? Until we're aligning those aspects, we're, you could say, fractured. We're unconsciously running programs on various, you could say, dimensions or timelines, but unconsciously. And so those unconscious programs are still looping back to trigger us here now, to trigger us here now. And those triggers are always affording us an opportunity to look at ourselves to look at ourselves through the lens of compassion, so that we can see a more source-like representation or source-like perspective. The more like compassionate, non-judgment, love, whenever we drop into that perspective, it's always more true to when we're focused on like the reality, right? The reality is, we have to remember, simply the creation from that voidal realm, from our infinite source void, and then projecting ourselves into this linear timeline. And then we're carrying those projections with us until we wake up to it, and then we start this journey, this so-called spiritual journey of awakening. And then basically what some teachers call the completion process, or the kind of the path to Buddhahood or whatever, is that we're then, once we awaken, we then have to own, transform, and integrate all of our aspects of self. So all of our conflicted or denied or wounded parts of ourselves, which is an aspect of our own belief in limitation under kind of like matrix illusion, but again, it's through our choosing. And then basically the emotional storms, as we talk about in the Fearless Life Guide, those are healings. Those are transformational, upheavals or vibrational shifts, which help us to access the higher consciousness, or simply access a connection to the higher self or the divine spark, which then the more we yoke that connection, the more in alignment we are, and then we feel the momentum and it builds, and then we start to see more of our imagination come to life in physical reality. So we're accessing our quantum field, our higher self, our multidimensionality, in a sense of in a recognition of infinite multiverses, kind of way beyond what our normal human mind in the program or in the matrix is taught to believe. And we are sponges, so we're imprinted by our soul's choice with limitation. And then that feeling of being limited as an unlimited being is ultimately what ushers us into our greater awakening stage, depending on our soul's growth and journey and desired manifestation in this lifetime. But you can see that in a very detached way, the contrast is what allows us to evolve. Suffering is what allows us to evolve. So what we're witnessing as self and other is that those polarities are stretching to create more suffering in the human collective consciousness. And yet we know that the suffering is what expands us. The suffering is usually what shifts us in a new direction. So the kind of gross or widespread suffering that would appear to be getting worse and worse and worse is actually it's almost like the pressure valve to expand this so-called awakening into greater pockets of the mass collective, which that awakening then reflects back to us in inner knowing as pioneers or bridges for the new world, the new earth, the new paradigm. All as it is us living in a more harmonious, loving world and feeling better, more expanded, more powerful as beings, which is beautiful and awesome and lovely. Maybe we live longer. Maybe we create things in a different way. Who knows, right? And that will come in time. Maybe we start healing modalities on a different level. Maybe we start schools for learning how to fly as humans. Maybe we start creating schools for telepathic communication and teleportation, right? The possibilities are actually unlimited. However, what we're transitioning now is opening the mind to actually encapsulate this broader reality, and then to embody it through the beingness that we are, and then to shine it out. And again, I observe this, yet breaking through into something, a very different reality of that we are embracing our emotionality and transforming. And no longer, through our deepening of understanding, no longer are we denying this feminine aspect of ourselves. No longer are we denying the intuitive, emotional part of ourselves, because we're starting to wake up to the fact that those emotions that we're denying are actually perpetuating the conflict and the limitation and the suffering that we see out there. So the more conscious we become, we integrate our unconscious, our darkness, by shining light and expressing it. Hence, share your darkness, you guys. Share the shit that you're working with. I know there's been subtle body stuff coming up, but I'm really pleased to say the residue is very minute, and it's not very difficult for me to just kind of like be with it, love it. I remember you, la la la, and then there you go. Subtle financial abundance triggers, wealth triggers, but again, kind of amazingly busting through that. So do make sure that you give yourself massive credit where you know your triggers are quite different or non-existent, where they would have been major triggers for you, and then dropping into a compassionate visioning of where we're headed. And so what we're seeing in a simultaneous kind of way is the releasing of the old, sharing, expressing, and exposing those old trigger points of suffer patterns, and then at the same time projecting our future timeline of greater joy, greater abundance, benevolence, generosity, commitment, whatever it is that we're looking at. So we're seeing a kind of closing completion of certain suffering patterns. So mine would have been like massive money worries and body hatred and self-loathing and self-hatred, unworthiness, all of that. So transforming those, suddenly I'm worthy. There's lots of flow of abundance and money and loving the body and feeling free in form and free with food and all that wonderful stuff. And then now being in a place to look at romance, relationship, and different facets of reality in such a way that we have these different areas of our lives, and what the work is to harmonize all these areas and be fulfilled and at peace, right? And so we're living in these times of shift, so it's very likely for some of us that we're closing down certain cycles and then opening new ones, so that we have more contrast to sift through, but just in different areas of our lives, or maybe the similar things, but we're looking at it from a different angle, right? So maybe we're looking at the same thing, but just from a much more compassionate perspective. And as we increase our self-awareness, ultimately we're more fearless in how we endeavor our darkness. And that's to say that because we can often, as we increase our light quotient, we can often expose ourselves to deeper darknesses. And that's not to frighten you, but it's basically to really open our minds to this reality of an infinite, eternal multiverse, like this, so expansive and kind of multi-layered, that the human mind and the 3D imprint is just, this is all just weird cuckoo woo woo, and yet it's not. Everything we ever sort of intuitive or felt or is a reality on some level, is a all of our movies and fantasies and our creations. There's a reality to those creations, right? And it's only through how we limit ourselves and fracture ourselves that we kind of cut it all down or compartmentalize, and thus we take away the magic of it. You know, we get told to not imagine anymore, to stop daydreaming, to get real, So there's a process here of us reclaiming our curiosity, reclaiming our innocence, and then actually believing in ourselves. In my experience, though, there's a substantial amount of unraveling. There's a substantial amount of emotional storming, which when you hit up against your first emotional or couple emotional storms, you're like, oh God, when is this going to end? And then it gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until we're looking at stuff we didn't even realize we had or we're carrying. And then there's this momentum, and then there's this sort of this sort of feel good momentum where it's not even like the process changes. You just get used to it, and then that becomes your new default, and that becomes your new way of being. And then anything that And then it's just like, it's easy to keep facing my darkness because I'm not afraid of it anymore. Whereas before, there's probably this phase of kind of counterintuitivity where we're not wanting to face that because we think we're all supposed to be pure love and light and goodness and kindness when there's polarity there, because we often catch each other out that that's not the truth of our being, that we talk about it in certain sort of, maybe on social media. That's part of me coming away from social media, you guys, is like seeing aspects of self that I'm transforming, because I realize that's not the truth of who I am. And we can all probably get caught up in the race or caught up in it, and then suddenly realizing, I'm just running on a treadmill, exhausting myself, but not actually feeling any real connection to this platform anymore. And so suddenly shifting into who is it that I really want to dedicate my heartfelt expression to and time to? It's you guys, it's the tribe, it's team love, it's certain clients. And that is being picky almost, but there again, protecting the energy field. When you've really worked on that, you don't want to come out of your intuition. You don't want to come out of your integrity. So I'm feeling really blessed, to have clients who really want to transform and can afford to pay really good money to have that transformational process be guided or supported in their lives by someone who's already undergone it. And then the tribe is just access for as many people as possible. Whoever could afford the 22 pounds a month, it's like, these are the people that I want to work with. And then ending this sort of rat race feeling I was getting of being on social media and crafting these posts and just sudden this, needing to step back from it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's filled with positivity and joy and lots of stuff. But again, we are who we are as beings, and I can only reflect back the permissioning that you're allowed to do anything and be anything you want. And that it's more than likely another aspect of the illusion that we need these social medias or to communicate. So I'm probably share a little less, but we'll still share on YouTube publicly. I've sort of publicly come off of my personal profile page on Facebook, so I'm not really going to be sharing there anymore. Of course, there's so much content for people to look at that I think it's more than enough. Keep sharing, guys. Keep putting your stuff out there. I know how the tribe works, and I know that you ebb and flow, so that is beautiful. I love it. Reach out if you want some private sessions. Some of you may or may not know, but it's 22 pounds for a 20-minute session, 44 for 40, 66 for 60. My public rate is 100 pounds an hour for people who want online coaching sessions. And myself and Team Love are actually working on a very sort of intensive, transformational coaching package to work with me very intensely, where basically I'm sort of at your beck and call when it comes to emails and messages, but the ticket price for a package like that is a little higher. So this is our group coaching platform. And just so you guys are aware of how I'll be navigating more of my, what's on offer out there, and then keeping this tribe really committed to the work in the book, because it's coming through for me. A lot of the lessons of the book are still coming through for me. So I'm looking forward to sharing them with you. And then this is it, like sharing and exposing darkness where we can, and moving through different veils and illusions to become more real, more grounded, more practical. Would you guys please let me know if you're interested in any of the online courses? If so, we can put you on a list. You guys know this or may not know this, but tribe members get 10% off of our Alta Love products, except for the clothes. So if you ever want to buy some books, you can get a 10% deal. If you ever want to, if you want to join the online courses, let us know and we'll put you on the list, but make sure you get a 10% discount for that as well. We're really looking forward to sharing these courses, especially because they're so practical, action-based and impactful in action. which I think a lot of different people in different worlds sometimes get slack for with radical activists or people who are really pioneering change on a practical level, that we want to see more of our quote unquote spiritual communities taking action in a way that that is living the impact, right? And I honestly think most do, like the large majority do, but because people often don't understand, I think, spiritual jingo, they just ridicule, make fun of, and alienate and disregard. So that's part of us just sharing vulnerably, is like, let's shine our weirdness and see what other weirdnesses and weirdos turn up in our lives, right? Because this is part of this phase for me, is actually detaching and creating boundary as MJ and as Alta Love, because it's been part of me for so long, and actually now letting it go and letting Alta Love be what it was always meant to be, as a creation, right? It's kind of like giving birth to a kid, I guess, because I've never done that, but like I can imagine that in parenting, like what kid grows, and then when it's not suckling at your teat anymore, at some point you kind of let it go. You let that child become what it is desiring, and what that experience for that being is creating for itself. Now, Alta Love as a creation, as an entity, has its own life force. That's how I see it anyway. It has its own life force. And because it was intentional, it was created through a divine portal of intention through my own consciousness. So just like a baby would be, right? And so that now life force, and now that there's a team, there's 4 of us as a structural pillars that have created a foundation. Those pillars as beings are in place to support the evolution of the movement of Alta Love as a movement. So we're in this portal, this belt, as it were. We're exposing darkness, but remember that as you expose your darkness, you're increasing self-awareness. Just remember to keep it compassionate, keep it loving, and share your insights with all of us, because I want to know. I want to know what you guys are sitting with. Thank you so much. Thanks, John, for sharing a huge amount on the tribe. Really appreciate your insights and just sharing where you're at with your meditation and your journey. I appreciate you guys loads, and I hope that this is useful to you, and I look forward to really committing more time, more attention to this tribe, because like in the beginning of my previous cycle, yoga was a lifeline. The tribe has been my lifeline through this transition of bottoming out, of looking at all my deepest, darkest, ugliestnesses, and then holding on to the tribe and coming around to the other side, where I just have you here sharing, reflecting things back in a really beautiful and fearless way. So thank you guys for being a part of this tribe and this movement with myself and Team Love. And I look forward, I just look forward to giving more in a more like kind of efficient way. So have a wonderful day. I'll keep you posted on the energies that we're very much sort of traversing. Make sure you're committing to your meditation, relaxation, and self-love. I gotta say, I've been sleeping loads lately, so don't be hard on yourselves, you guys. If you're feeling mega tired, maybe foggy, maybe like, what's going on? If that's the case, do your very best to sleep. Luxuriate. Let yourself have that downtime. Let yourself rest into this energy and give yourself permission to just stamp out, black out, let go of the stuff that you're done with. Let go of the thoughts, the beliefs, the ways of being that you're done with, and permission yourself to step in to whatever you've been visioning, whatever higher manifestation you're sensing for yourself. Just permission yourself to step into that, because we all can. Sometimes we just need to tell each other we can. So I love you guys. Thank you so much. And I will speak to you real soon. Bye.